think I'm on. Can you hear me? We hear you. Yay! Awesome. And I think Grady is. There's Grady. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? I really appreciate all your taxidermy in your video screens. It's great.
Yeah, I got a real problem. My father's a taxidermist, a professional taxidermist, and so I come by it naturally.
Ah,
They're uh, they're they're weird. They're weird and
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's a bonus.
yeah, I have a full size. You can't see it because I would unplug my computer, but I have a like literally it's this tall, a full sized bear dressed in a judge's outfit, and it's
Wow.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she's lovely and amazing. And they're all like found objects, like on the side of the road, so they're all in terrible shape. Um,
Does your dad pick the outfits or do you pick the outfits?
No, in fact, he is completely against my particular brand of taxidermy. He does like real beautiful taxidermy. I just find things at thrift shops and go like, this needs to come home with me. And then I make little outfits for them. And then actually, this is ooh, this is Fleece Witherspoon. And she did have a full outfit on, and the cats were messing with her, and so instead I've just given her a crown. And
Is that a llama or a sheep?
it is an alpaca.
An alpaca.
Yes, and she died of kidney failure. They all have to die of natural causes or be roadkill, or just really old. Yeah, I've got problems. So
I think they're pros, not cons.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Let's see. So you were in South Carolina, is that right?
I am. I'm usually in New York, but and actually, if I don't know if people can hear it, but in the background there are the crickets going that feature in any book set in Mount Pleasant, which is where I am right now. And I had to spend a long time thinking about what they sound like, because this is the soundtrack to your entire life when you live here, especially in the summer. Cicadas in the day. No, wait. Yeah, cicadas in the day, katydids, and crickets at night. But yeah, I'm down here. I have a sick mother I'm here taking care of. So I'm here for a few weeks, and I can see her. She is getting excited over, I think, McNeil Lehrer NewsHour, and getting swoony over Joe Biden's VP pick. Yeah. So I've been banished. Yeah. So I've been banished to the yard. I'm not in the old village where the books are set. That's just up the road about a mile. I was there today walking around, but people will be quick to tell you I may be in Mount Pleasant, but I'm not in the old village. So don't get too excited. No one would have a pile of bricks and a portable grill like that behind me in the old village. You'd be arrested.
Right. Well, good to know. So I'm pretty sure that you don't need any kind of introduction because they love all your books, but just in case you happen to slide in. Yeah, exactly. No, they're here to confront you, and they're very angry.
Good. Bring it.
So this is Grady Hendrix, and he wrote a whole bunch of wonderful books, including My Best Friend's Exorcism. Just finished this one last week, so good. Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This was one of our optional books on our book. A bunch of you read that. And Horror Store was also one that we did as an option as well. And you also have some other books too, which I have
Easy
not read
come,
yet.
easy go.
So I don't have them here because this, yeah, but we'll talk about it. Let's see. Okay, so before we start, we always do the, it used to be the Weird Five, now it's the Strange Six, the 6 strange questions that we ask every author.
Let's do it.
So, all right, 2 weeks into the zombie apocalypse, where are you?
Oh, okay. So I think about this a lot, actually. And there's one of 2 options. So if I was anywhere down south or near a coast, out in the water, get to an island, you can control an island. But I live in New York. But I'm very excited. I used to have zombie stress streams until I moved to the 23rd floor of a building. So now it's sweet. All I have to do is jam up the stairwells, seal off my floor, make sure my neighbors are all dead. I'm good to go. I got a balcony we can get all the way down. You know, we can get to the street for like scavenging and stuff. And I've been working on upper body to be able to climb back up. I'm set. So tall buildings.
Very smart. Very smart. Let's see. What underrated book should everyone read?
Oh, true. Does it have to be horror?
No, anything.
Oh, True Grit by Charles Portis. I think it's the great American novel. Huckleberry Finn was great for the 19th century. True Grit, 20th century. It's absolutely amazing, and it's short.
All right. What is your favorite word?
Probably scrumptious, but that would be rapidly followed by moist, because there is no sentence that moist can't make more disgusting.
Only a horror writer would say that was their favorite.
You have many moist taxidermies. I love your moist dress. That's a moist pack of bricks back there. I mean, it just makes everything
good.
worse.
And actually, this dress is moist because it's Texas and it's fucking hot here. In fact, it's so hot, I'm just going to take my hair off. So,
ooh,
sorry.
Wow.
You're going to have to deal with my real hair because it's really hot here.
I hope this is like that Edgar Allan Poe story, and you just keep taking pieces off through this, and like your glass eye, your fake jaw. You just end up as like the crypt keeper.
That would be fantastic. Let's see. How do you like your eggs?
Oh man, omelet.
Yep.
I really love diner food, and so it's always an American cheese omelet with grits. And do not make an omelet with cheddar cheese. That's awful. You want American cheese because it's smooth and plasticky.
It definitely is. Or Velveeta.
Yeah, and grits, please. Bad diner grits I can live with. Bad diner home fries are an abomination. Just a sad, moist pancake of poor potatoes.
Grits with cheese? Or grits with...
I'll take grits with cheese as long as there's a lot of butter and hot sauce.
Okay. All right. Fair
Preferably
enough.
Texas Pete, but I'll settle for anything.
Amen. What would you like from the devil?
Oh, like in a sell your soul kind of situation?
It doesn't necessarily have to be. Like, maybe I'm going out and I'll pick something up for you. Do you need something from the devil?
Oh, yeah. Revenge against my enemies. Because I like to be a big person and say I don't have enemies, but they're people I hate. Some of them I've never met, but I hate them. And because I'm petty. And I really want revenge against them, but I don't want to be the one who does it because then I look petty. So if it could just happen to them and I'd get the satisfaction of knowing it's happening. And at the very end, as, you know, the worm turns, they breathe their last. It doesn't always have to be death, but whatever it is, like some ghost just whispers in their ear, "That's from Grady." You know, just cap it. And no one will ever believe them.
That's so good. That's so good.
And I'll make a list. Like, I'll make it easy for the devil.
Oh my God. Well, how many?
Mad at these dudes in this F-150 Ford. Like, for no good reason. They just looked like dorks, and they were driving like idiots. And their driving wasn't affecting me personally, but it offended me. And I was like, those guys, I just wanted all their hair to fall out because they looked like the kind of guys who would like be so crushed if they were bald. And so like I'm just like nail pattern baldness for both of you.
So it's randos. You're not even like, it's not even.
That's
like
not random. They annoyed me. That's a very clear criteria. The rules are clear. Don't annoy me. One of my favorite short stories, because it's absolutely horrifying and it's so great, is I think it's called It's a Good Life or A Good Life, the Jerome Bixby story about the little kid who's 5 years old in the town, and when he doesn't like people, his mind sends him to the cornfield and everyone just has to please him all the time. I mean, it's horrifying, but it's amazing.
There was a Twilight Zone episode.
That's based on the story, yeah. And it was in the Twilight Zone feature film. It was one of the ones where the girl and his sister, her mouth disappears, which is so freaky.
Oh, that was a good 80s horror. I loved it. And then the last of the Strange Six, Will You Be My Friend?
Yeah, well, it depends, right? A couple of things. You had me at the taxidermy, and you're having me at removing artificial body parts. Like, the hair is already gone, and you've got prosthetic eyes. So, like, you know, yeah, so, like, I'm in. Well, you're wearing glasses. I mean, glasses are basically
Oh,
like
yeah.
an artificial leg for your eyes. I mean, I wear
Well,
glasses.
I mean, I do, but wait, hang on a
Oh, let's see
second.
this. Those
And
are big dolls too.
well, they're these dolls. They're these
Ah,
terrifying dolls. And
got it,
they,
got it.
when you pull on their when you pull on this string in their back, their eyes roll back and they change to different colors.
Oh,
And so
nice.
these are like except all of these are brown. Some of those are like yellow and cool colors.
I feel like you're about to start singing a song. All of these are brown,
And
and
literally,
my alpaca's dead.
doesn't rhyme, but it's still really good.
No, I know. I mean, does it have to run?
It doesn't have to. And it's one of my favorite songs. So let's see. Okay, so let's start first with why horror?
Okay. So I'm going to say something, and this isn't personal at all, but whenever someone asks me that question, I always, like, in my head, I go back to elementary school where someone's like, why are you so weird? Or like, why are you so gross? Like, I don't know. It's just sort of, you write what you write, and then the marketing department tells you what it is. And you kind of keep going. And you figure, this is my job. I don't have backup skills. But for me, at least, the reason I actually don't find horror very limiting, the reason I like it is, I mean, the one thing we all have in common is we die, right? Like everyone on this Zoom thing, we're all going to die. We may have a lot of other differences, but that's a commonality. And that's sort of the thing that gives our lives meaning. Like if we live forever, your lives have no meaning. I mean, James Harris, his life is pretty bereft of meaning. Um, so you need an expiration date, or every day is just the same. And horror is really the only genre that really sits with that in any kind of way. And so for that reason, I enjoy it. I feel there's a lot there. Also, it encompasses everything from, death and dying to, Nazi leprechauns. So it's very wide. The waters are wide.
Exactly. So horror is my favorite genre. I cannot write it personally, but when it comes to reading and movies, that's my number one. In fact, I have wiped out Netflix and Hulu like every single, pretty much every movie you could possibly imagine. And
Right.
a lot of people have been like, I don't understand why you like horror so much because I have really severe anxiety disorder. And so it seems like that would go against the idea. But there is something about confronting a type of horror that is so imaginable, but at the same time, probably isn't going to happen to you, that I think allows you to
You're very
exercise
confident.
that. But I mean, it's such a strange, like if it's horror, like serial killer horror, I'm like, okay, but yeah, that could still read it. I know everything about serial killers. But if you give me something about vampires or exorcism or,
Sure.
trapped in, then I'm like, oh, I can exercise all of the terror in a way that I know this probably isn't going to happen to me. I mean, it
Right.
could,
I mean, who do you think works at IKEA? People who can't find their way out.
but that's exactly right.
They're
Speaking of,
the 5 years. You work there for 5 years, and they show you the exit.
I love it. This is, okay, first of all, this is brilliant. So funny,
Oh,
so
thanks.
dark. The illustrations and it's just so smart and enjoyable, and it made me, like, literally it made me a little bit jealous because there was so much that I was like, oh, there's 666s and all of the numbers and just all these little things that I'd find and I'd be like, oh, it's so good. Is there going to be a part two? Because you kind of left it a little open.
No, I mean, never say never. And I'm sure my publisher would love for there to be a part two, but I've got so much stuff I want to write that doing a sequel it would have to be pretty compelling. And to me, the story of Amy and Basil is done. There was going to be a TV show that got kicked around for a while. Gail Berman, who was the exec at Fox, who did Buffy the Vampire Slayer, she was on board, and they couldn't crack it. I mean, some things, they can't be other things. And they had a really hard time with the TV show, and the rights finally reverted. So now it's going to be a feature film that I'm doing the screenplay for, and it's the folks who did 1917 and Black Swan are doing it. The producers, not the directors, not Darren Aronofsky, or Christopher Nolan, but the producers are. So I'm trying to get in as many World War II trenches or World War I trenches and as much ballet as possible to make them happy. But yeah, no sequel planned, but I keep going back there.
Yeah. That is awesome. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I'm very excited because I'm very ready to watch that. Are you sticking with the book, or are you moving it in a different direction?
No, I mean, there's some things that have to change a little bit. Like, I had a much more fun idea for the ending than what's in the book. But in general, it's the book. I mean, the book is, every book, not just anyone's, but they all have like an engine that makes it go. And usually it's a really simple idea, right? And as long as you get that right, you're great. And Horror Store really is, it's a haunted house ride through an IKEA, and it takes place over one night. It's a dark ride. And so that's what it is. And it lends itself really well to a feature film, or I hope it does. So far, so good.
Yeah.
I could still screw it up.
I don't think you will. It was definitely one of those books that as I was reading it, I could see it in my head. So yeah, I think it'll work really well.
And I have to apologize just really quickly. I keep looking around because there are less people outdoors than normal. The squirrels have gotten very aggressive around here. I think you might have just seen one. One jumped on my back yesterday as I was walking out. I was from the porch roof. And so I just keep seeing things darting. And so I really will be embarrassed if you guys see me get taken out by a squirrel. Feral dog.
So much now.
Well, when I get rabies, I don't know, maybe rabies. What disease do squirrels have? Although it'd be amazing to get bitten by a squirrel and become like a were squirrel, just like once on every full moon, you grow a long bushy tail and you run and you like raid people's bird feeders.
You just want nuts real bad.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the ones around here are addicted to bird seed and human blood. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
They sort of are neck and neck for favorite food for squirrels.
Ours are all like highly suicidal to the point where I think they have that parasite that makes them want to kill themselves. I mean, they run out under cars constantly, and I can't even try to save them, even though I really want to.
Low quality of life. I mean, they might just be depressed.
I mean, it might be. There's plenty to do out here, though. Although it's really hot, I'd probably kill myself.
Yeah,
it's so hot. It's awful. They actually got into my cantaloupes and like split them open, and I had put pantyhose around them because we have this like raccoon in the backyard, and I thought, well, this will keep the raccoon from, because he'll be like, pantyhose, what's this? But no, apparently the squirrels were just like, nope, just rip that open. So
yeah. Also, I mean, they might like the pantyhose. Like, it gives a nice sheer feeling.
It's very luxurious, and
if they're going to rob a bank, they can put the pantyhose over their heads.
That would be awesome. Let's see. So I was going to share with you one of the books that I have on my to-read list, but I haven't started yet, was your Paperbacks from Hell.
Thanks. Yeah. And
it looks so good. But in particular, because I started collecting, when you get like an accidental collection, like you start, there's like, and then all of a sudden you have hundreds. So I have hundreds of copies of pulp, like just paperback pulp, like from sleaze fiction to, and it's anywhere from like the 30s to the 80s. And when I was looking at your through your book, I was like, oh, you would so enjoy my this one
Virgin
is
Planet.
Wow. And this one is good. Lust Farm, where she's shooting a gun into his. Actually, you know what? These These are the sex ones, I think. Sin in space.
There's probably a lot of sin, and actually space is a vacuum. There's probably zero sin in space.
Well, you would think that. To my beloved husband, she brought a man and death. This
Wow.
one's nice though, because she's in space and wearing a bikini. So,
Which
not sure.
is, I think that's like NASA approved.
I'm 100% sure. And then this lady, she's found a boyfriend, and it's
Moon pool. Oh wow, look at that.
yeah.
Is there an actual pool on the moon in that one?
There is, and that's where the frog hangs out. And then
Whoa.
this one's nice. Human? Question mark. And there's
I
always,
don't know.
and I like how like his nipples are hanging out, because usually it's all the women that have the nipples, and he's like, no, I'll give.
Yeah.
So,
Although his sort of man brassiere seems pointless if his nipples are hanging out.
I think it's all about temptation, is what I think it is.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
He's trying to put the sin into space. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would have been a great tagline for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I saw that and I was like, I want you to come over and look through all my paperbacks, because you would appreciate them and no one else does.
Well, I feel like that's why the space program sort of lost a lot of public support, is the suits weren't racy enough.
That is exactly what it was. Let's see. So inspiration, writing tools. A lot of us are writers. Do you have any writing tools or things that help you to get through the slog?
You mean like keyboard, or like something a little more abstract than that?
Well, like for me, what's really helpful is I write memoir, so it's different, but I'll have like all my chapters up, and every time that I work on one, I'll take the chapter and change the percentage.
Yeah.
So any tips or tricks that are like, oh, I'm so glad as a writer I discovered this works for me?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what gets you going. I mean, for me, like I have an office outside my house, and it's a rental space. It's a little pricey because it's Manhattan, but it was kind of like when you live in a 1-bedroom apartment with someone, and you write, like, it's a good way to get a divorce. And having that nut I have to make not to get too squirrely about it, but that nut I have to make every month to pay for this space makes sure I'm earning money. So basically for me, it's kind of whatever gets me through what I do. So I'll write at my office mostly, but then if I'm having a problem, I'll go to the park, I'll go to a diner, I'll go to a coffee shop, and right there I'll switch from keyboard to freehand. It's amazing. It's like the least interesting magic trick ever. Now I'm going to write with my hands. But really, for me, the big deal is I got to pay the bills. And and one of the things I do is I do a rigorous, relentless, an R word that means boom, word count every day. So I have like I used to do it on my Apple calendar that was on my computer, but they changed that in the operating system. So I lost like 3 years of writing log. But so I buy a paper calendar, and every day I write in my word count or however many chapters edited or anything. And it's nice. It's kind of like when you want your kid to stop wetting the bed and you have the puppy dog calendar with the stars, and you're like, let's have 7 gold stars in a row. It's like, let's have 5,000 word days. Like, let's do that. And it turns out you just write a lot less than you think you do, unless you're writing down your word count. So that really helps me a lot. I use Scrivener, if that's of interest to anyone, which has a really high learning curve, but it's really, really a good way to write a book. Otherwise, just kind of fake it.
Yeah. Well, those are excellent tips. And I think you're like the 5th author in a row who has said switch to writing by hand. You obviously have better handwriting than I do. But
my handwriting's indecipherable. I mean, I don't know. This looks pretty bad.
That's pretty lovely.
And also, there's nothing more embarrassing than being that you're out in public. You're like, I had a thought. I mean, you just like, if I saw someone doing that, I would punch them. So thank God I can't see myself doing that.
Oh my God. I do all of my I had a thoughts on my phone notes app, and then I immediately
Hmm.
forget what it was that I wrote. And so I'll go back and I'll be like, what in the hell did this mean?
Yeah,
Um,
hold on. I've got one of those right here. Hold on. Where is it? Bear with me. This
okay.
is interesting, I
So that's
promise.
good. That's good.
Um, well, one is pup kiss, meow meow, and Roger. I don't know what that means. But where's the really good one I found recently where I was like, what? Um, oh, 1901 in Ponsonby, YC, Whitakers, Fix and Fog, kiwi onion dip flavor TV get, pineapple lumps. Now, this isn't a shopping list. I've never bought anything called, I don't even like pineapple that much. Um, this makes no sense to me. Um, I think, I don't know. I don't know what it means.
Did you
Pineapple
maybe
lumps.
did you turn on your maybe your voice thing and it just accidentally picked up
I
random?
don't do, it's funny. I've actually only used that. There's a couple of times I've used the voice memo thing and it works so well. And I'm amazed I don't use it more. But I've used it a few times when I'm writing a book and I need to go somewhere and know what a driving route is. So I'll drive the route and then talk it out like, oh, big plywood sign says rabbit meat, $10. Like, and do that. And it usually gets it pretty well. I don't know why I don't do that more often. Usually I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah. I write ridiculous ones, and mine are
wait,
like,
pineapples lumps are delicious New Zealand candy. Aha. Okay, so this wasn't a writing note at all because my wife did a job in New Zealand and I went with her. So that must have been about
to
New
remind
Zealand.
yourself to
See,
get pineapple lumps next time
pineapple
you're in New
lumps. I
Zealand.
don't think I did. So actually, the next thing I'm going to ask the devil for is if you're swinging by New Zealand, can you grab me some pineapple lumps?
Pineapple lumps. Make those guys bald and give
Yeah.
me some pineapple lumps. This is all fine.
Yeah, I
My
really didn't
last
think
note.
of it. I didn't think it was a shopping list. Someone's right in the chat. I swore that wasn't a shopping list because I did not
It
think it
was.
was.
It's so good. It's so good.
I'm an idiot.
So we actually have quite a few really good questions that have come through in the Q&A, and giant thank you to Elizabeth, who's working in the back and sending me the questions because I'm so bad at looking at the chat at the same time. Let's see. So one is there any chance that Guide to Vampire Slaying may be made into a movie?
Oh yeah, it is. It's been optioned for TV.
Really?
So yes, so some Amazon folks are diligently working on that right now. And the nice thing about that is I'm a poor no, I'm an inefficient writer, and so there were two. I would even say three, but really two radically different versions of that book before the one people read and either enjoyed or didn't. And the nice thing about doing the TV show is everyone's like, well, what's season two? And fortunately, I have all this world building I did and all this stuff, and they're able to use. So when they have questions, I have answers because I wrote this book three, if not more times.
Wow. Do you find
Yeah.
screenwriting, is it harder than, I don't want to say regular writing, non-screenwriting?
Well, they're both hard. I mean, and also they're both not hard. I mean, I always have to remind myself, like, I could be living, like, I could be working at McDonald's. Like, nothing against McDonald's, but that's hard. Like, my wife's a chef and she'll come home from work with like at like 1 a.m. with like cuts and burns. She's all sweaty and she's got stains all over her clothes. And I'm like, oh, my fingertips hurt. I sat in an ergonomic chair in a climate controlled room and typed for 8 hours. So my problems seem very small. So I don't like to say hard. The same way I don't like to say brave with writers. Like brave is for people who fight in wars or run into burning buildings.
Yes.
But I really like screenwriting. I really like writing books, and I actually think one of the things that made me a better screenwriter is writing books. And one of the things that made me a better book writer is writing screenplays. And if you think I'm bad at both, then clearly they just nagged each other out. But one of the things I do with every book is I try to get a log line, which is a very screenwriter thing. Like, what's that one sentence that encapsulates everything? Because there comes a point in the middle of a book, I don't know, maybe this doesn't happen to you, but it happens to me all the time, where I'm lost. And I remember that one line, kind of log line. I'm like, right, that's my true north. I will navigate by that. Like with my best friend's exorcism, it was, It's a story about two girls in high school whose friendship is strong enough to beat the devil. Great. Whenever I'm lost, if it's not about that, out it goes, you know? Um, I'm just wrapped up on Monday rewrites for my novel that's coming out next year. And, you know, I had that log line and there were lots of things that were very clever and very witty, if I might say so myself. And I think some beautiful writing, but they weren't that story. Out they went. I think it was PG Woodhouse who was like, you have to have a story. And if you don't have a story, you can try to cover it up with pretty writing or cleverness, but you don't have a story and people will smell it. So ever since then, I'm really worried about how I smell. And I shower like 9 times a day.
Well, so far they smell absolutely fantastic. Let's see. Did IKEA have any comments about the book?
Yes. So it was going to be called IKEA instead of Orsk. And at the very last minute, not really the very last minute, but midway through the process, the legal started getting not legal actually, they were okay with it. The head of Quirk started getting very nervous about it, and I don't blame him. And I didn't really want to call it IKEA because I had interviewed a bunch of IKEA employees and they really loved their job in a very genuine, I'm not shilling for the man way. Like it, as far as retail goes, IKEA treats its workers very well. And if I get 5 friends to apply for a job at IKEA, I get a 25% discount. So they're great to work for. And, so I didn't want to screw these people who'd given me their time by saying, yeah, and IKEA is a crummy employer. So I made Orsk, which I like. Book goes out. And so a lot of the people who worked at IKEA, I gave them copies and they all liked it. Oh, it's so funny, blah, blah. And so I'm at a book event in Ohio, Cincinnati, and Books by the Bank, the Joseph Beth bookstore does. Big event, big floor. It's one of my first book events ever that has more than one person there. And like there's lots of people, lots of crowds, people are coming and going. And I'm like, I like that kind of thing. I'm like hand selling my book. You know, I'm like, hey, you, blah, blah, blah. Because I don't want to carry the boxes home, frankly. And so I'm going. And this woman comes up and I start giving her, oh, it's about a haunted IKEA, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, oh, I know. I work for IKEA. And I said, oh, well, then clearly you need 2 copies. And I'm like, so what do you, and she's like, I work for IKEA corporate. I'm like, oh. And she's like, I'm in communications. I'm like, oh. And so we're talking kind of awkwardly because she doesn't want to say anything about IKEA, and I'm just awkward in general. And she says, we're aware of your book, and like totally poker face. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, makes a great gift. Um, and so she buys a copy, sign it to her. I think her name was Renee. And she turns around and her timing was impeccable. Like a ninja dropping a smoke bomb would not be this on the nose. As she slips into the crowd, she says, we all think it's very funny. And then poof, she's gone. So IKEA corporate thinks it's very funny. I have that from Renee or
Who
Rachel.
probably didn't exist and was from the Beehive. So
Exactly. I'm sitting here doing this, and there's probably someone from IKEA corporate on this. Like once again, he's misrepresenting our view on his book. Another thing to sue him over. They're just taking their time. IKEA has forever.
or they're saying Renee died 20 years ago. So who knows? Who knows? Let's see. Who are your horror writer icons, or who influenced your writing style the most, if anybody?
Well, with every book, I kind of pick an author who winds up being kind of my spirit animal. So, and then, okay, so it gets caught. So for Southern Book Club, it was Shirley Jackson. And it was really, I mean, yeah, I know, and I really love Shirley Jackson, but I really love her memoirs, Raising Demons and Life Among the Savages, which take her sort of razor sharp, very black sense of humor, her real like precision and that almost surgical sentence construction, and it puts it in the service of being funny and also being very real. And it's really great. Both those books are phenomenal. And So while I was writing, I usually don't read fiction while I'm writing fiction. So while I'm writing Southern Book Club, I was reading those two books over and over. I read We've Always Lived in the Castle again, and I read the Ruth Franklin biography of Shirley Jackson again. And then I read there's another book called, God, it's something demons in it, like something, I can't remember, but it's another biography of Jackson that's really good. So I reread half of that. So yeah, so she was my big thing for this, and I really love Shirley Jackson. For my best friend's exorcism, I think if I'm no for We Sold Our Souls, it was Chuck Palahniuk, just because he does a really good job with that sort of on the body sensation, and his writings always sounded very punk rock to me, and so that was my thing. I just wrote a nonfiction book that's coming out next year that was really Robert Caro, and I'm really flattering myself. He's a biographer. He did The Power Broker about Robert Moses, and he's working on his LBJ biography that's now up to like 5,000 volumes. But he just has this very much talk to everyone, interview everyone, check everything, read every piece of paper. And he's got this really engaging sort of old school writing style I like. So it always changes, but over everyone. And this is the least interesting thing I could possibly say. So I assume I'm going to watch those participant numbers just right through the floor. I did a Stephen King reread years ago. I did it for Tor because at the time the Tor.com website paid, I think it was $25 or maybe $50 a post. And I got writing for them, and like some months I'd write like 5 posts for them. It'd be like $250, and that would be my grocery money. And so I was always looking for stuff to pitch them. And I was like, oh, I'll reread Stephen King and I'll do the first 10 books, the first 10 books and call it a day. And I wound up doing all of them up through like 2015, I think, 16. It was like 40 something novels, all this stuff. And when I started doing that, it took me about 5 years. And when I started doing it, I had just about to sign the contract for Horror Store. And when I finished doing it, I had just won the Stoker for Paperbacks from Hell. And so it was this period in my life where a lot of things changed in terms of how I made a living, how broke I was, et cetera, et cetera. Not that I'm that much less broke now, but I went from like really, struggling to, oh, I know how I'm paying my rent next month. So the one thing that was consistent over that 5 years was reading these big, fat Stephen King books. Thank you. Private Demons, The Life of Shirley Jackson. I appreciate it, Suzanne. And so reading these big, fat Stephen King books was the consistent thing. So I have this tiny 6-inch tall version of Stephen King, like who sort of like lives on my shoulder. And I don't ever want to meet the real thing because I'm really invested in this guy, and he's been a good friend to me for a very long time. So sorry. And look, the participant numbers held strong. Yes, you guys are gluttons for punishment and boring stories. You'd be great with old people.
That was a great story. I loved Stephen King. The most that I loved him when he was like really into cocaine. And so it made me kind of sad. I was like, I wonder if I'd be really good if I just like started doing a lot of cocaine for a while.
Well, I think the thing about him and cocaine, though, is that writing was such a big like part of his life at that point. Like sitting there and doing his words every day, that like he didn't get distracted. Like if I did cocaine, I'd be like, I'm a squirrel. I'm gonna run up that tree. And he's like, I'm gonna write. I'm gonna use this Wang word processor and write.
Yes. Let's see. Or icons. Let's see.
Also, Nappy, sorry, can I just say, Nappy just said I am old, people. Me too. I'm 47, and I realized recently that makes me old, according to most kids I run into.
Literally 47 club.
Hi. Ow. I broke my computer. How does this work? Gotta wait for a child to come by and fix it.
Okay, so this is a good question. I'd like to hear some talk about horror versus gore. Is gore a necessary part of horror? Can you have horror without gore? What's the balance? Good question.
Yeah, so, okay. So that's really, and horror has a really bad rap because of the gore. So, when I sold Horror Store, I told my mom, I was like, oh my God, I have a book deal. And she was so excited. And then I was like, it's for a horror novel. And like, steel shutters came down over her eyes. Like the joy died. because like a lot, I mean, horror has a really bad rap. I mean, as being very gory, very bloody, very misogynistic, all this stuff. And it's not entirely undeserved. I mean, where that comes from is in the 90s. Paperback publishing was huge. I mean, they were like publishing everything. I was talking to someone when I did Paperbacks from Hell who worked at the Barnes and Noble in Union Square in New York City, which was the big one for the city. And they said they were getting so many mass market horror paperbacks in that they weren't even shelving them. They had a shopping cart at the end of one aisle and they would just pile the new releases into there. And people were pulping, you know, there were books were being returned. Those paperbacks, I think they were pulping something like 100 million mass market paperbacks a year, just returns. There was an author who allegedly, and her name can't be spoken, Anne Rice, who supposedly had one of her big books come out in the mid 90s that had a 90% return rate. Like 9 out of every 10 copies went unsold. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a good story. And while that was happening, Silence of the Lambs was huge in 91. It won all those Oscars. And so everyone wanted to be doing serial killers. And it was right at the end of the splatterpunk movement, which is like this, all the youngs were really invested in this sort of pushback, ideologically driven. We want to be gore. We want to be extreme. We want to be the writers where we don't look away. And all that came together until you had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of paperbacks coming out that were being sold as horror that were basically about murdering and torturing women. And so many got published. It was a huge bubble. It all collapsed and horror sort of flamed out, publishing at least in a big splattery, pustulant pimple pop of misogynistic violence. And there were exceptions to it, but that was really what was there. I mean, and so that really stained horror for a long time to come. Um, and so I don't think horror has to be gory, but um, I think that when you're writing anything, you really have to get the reader invested with on the body sensation. They need to know what it feels like. You need to translate these experiences and feelings into these weird coded things they're going to read and have this experience on their body and feel claustrophobic or feel horny or feel bored or feel pain or feel exhaustion. You have to convey it. And horror often deals with bodies and extremity. So a lot of times it's pain and a lot of times it's gore. It's really interesting, actually. Stephen King, you know, famously in, I think, 99? No, earlier than that. I can't remember. For the guy who did the reread, I suck. But got hit by a van, basically turned into a pile of broken glass from the waist down, meticulously put together, lived with excruciating pain for many years. And it's really interesting to see how his writing about pain changes over those years. And you look at his earlier books, and a lot of them traffic in really over-the-top gore. That's great. I mean, it's really fun. But you look at books like Duma Key, which really almost doesn't have any gore in it, but it's about a guy who lost his arm in a car accident. And the descriptions about the car accident, about losing his arm, they're not gory in particular, but you feel it. And you really feel it. And you just I have to think that living with actual chronic ongoing pain for so long, having that shape his life for so long, just gave him a totally different perspective. So it's not gory, but it's very uncomfortable reading. When I did We Sold Our Souls, I'm a real claustrophobe. And the idea of being trapped in a cave, there's that movie, The Descent, about the women who go cave diving and they run into cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. And I could care less about the underground albino murder creatures, but those opening scenes of them caving and going through these like narrow passages, I'm like hyperventilating. And so there's a bit in We Sold Our Soul that's it's about claustrophobia. And I get it's the third most passage I've written that I get the most comments on, people emailing me, just because that really tweaks their claustrophobia. And I guess I got it right. I actually closed myself up underneath a bed that was way too heavy to feel like I was slowly being crushed when I wrote that.
Is there anything that you won't write about because it makes you too uncomfortable?
No. I mean, I'm very careful about writing about pets dying or animals dying. And just because I've done it, And that's the number one. Good Dog Max and My Best Friend's Exorcism. I get so many emails about that. It's an imaginary dog. And also pets die. I mean, that's a really big part of life. Pets die, and it's something we all live with. We all have it. Well, I don't really anymore, but we all have pets, and we love them, and we know we're going to outlive them, and that's tough. I'm having to talk to my mom recently about, she wants to get a dog, and it's sort of like, who's going to outlive who? And she decided ultimately not to, because she doesn't want that to happen. But so it happens. But yeah, animals dying, people have a hard time with it. In my new book, I actually had a scene of animals dying. I just took it out. I've done it, and I don't want to be the guy where animals die in every one of his books.
Right.
So yeah, that's the stuff I won't write about, is repetitive stuff.
Awesome. What book have you read that you couldn't read at night? And this person says, I personally had to put down Southern Book Club a few times at night because it was a little bit too. So
thanks.
Tell me some books that you had to put down because they were too scary.
I don't think I ever have. I'm trying to think. I know that there was something that was giving me some tension.
Even when you were a kid? Or did you read horror when you were a kid?
No, I didn't really read horror when I was a kid. I read Stephen King and I read Clive Barker, but they didn't really get me that way. Like my sisters, totally, they're all older, and they read the Amityville Horror and Burnt Offerings, and had to one of them had to put the Amityville Horror face down on another floor of the house before she could go to bed. And actually that cover of Burnt Offerings, the hardcover with the doorknob with the face on it, that used to freak me out as a kid. I didn't want to be in the same room with that. But horror I didn't read because the covers were too creepy for me. So yeah, there was something I was reading recently that was making me tense, but I can't remember what it was. I'm sorry.
I started reading Stephen King, third grade, I think, was when I first started reading Stephen King. And I would take all of my grandmothers, because she would have the V.C. Andrews and Stephen King and just the horror, and I would sneak them out, and she would let me, and she would pretend to look the other way.
Yeah.
I got in trouble because I brought Pet Sematary. I think fourth grade I brought it for a book.
That's a great year. That's a great age to read it, though.
It's so good because you relate the kids so much. But it was funny because as I got older, my dad was he bought me my first hardcover, and it was It. And I think I was in seventh grade. I might have been sixth, seventh grade. And it was, so I have the original first edition. It was my first hardcover book. And my mom was like, you absolutely cannot read this. I know you've been sneaking your granny's books. You cannot read this. You're not old enough. So what I would do instead is I would wait until all the lights were up in the house, and I'd have the flashlight, which is the worst way to read that book. But it was the only way that I could read it, was under the covers. And that's the scariest book I've ever read, just because my mom made me read it at night by myself. So yeah.
Well, yeah, for me also, it's the stuff that creeps me out is hopelessness. Like Stephen King's The Raft, where the guy's just stuck and he's gonna die. I always feel like Dawn of the Dead, the original one, has the most genius ending, and that ending's had more impact on what I write than anything in my life, because it just is so relentlessly bleak, and then it's not. And but that idea of there's just no more options. You were just out of options. There's a movie called Martyrs that I saw once, an amazing movie. I never want to see it again. I'm hesitant to even recommend it, but it's amazing. But it's part of it's about a woman who's imprisoned by a cult, and there's no way out. She's just there. Let's Go Play at the Adams, that we just brought back into print through Valancourt. I never want to read it again, but it's a genius book. But again, it gets me upset because there's no way out. There's no options. There's no hope.
Did you watch, I just recently discovered this existed, and I bet everybody else already knows about it, but what was it called? The Tenant. It was Roman Polanski.
Oh, the Roman Polanski. I've read the book, but I haven't seen the movie.
It was
How's the movie?
It was bizarre, weird, but very. I mean, it had the same that bleak psychological horror. I didn't actually realize until I saw that one that Roman Polanski did the Apartment trilogy. That it was.
Repulsion. Yeah.
Exactly. And so now I was like, Repulsion, look, there's a new one I can watch. And it's not on Netflix and Hulu, and I'm too cheap to pay for it. So I have to wait
I'm
until
with you. Yeah. Um, well, that's another thing, by the way. If anyone hasn't seen Rosemary's Baby in a long time, go watch it again. I had the pleasure of seeing that at this movie marathon down in Philly a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. And surprisingly, the audience, I would say 2/3 hadn't seen it before. And it's like a 2 hour and 10-minute movie, 2 hour movie. And this was a horror movie marathon with Friday the 13th entries in it, like just crazy over the top stuff. And Rosemary's Baby is a slow burn. Man, you could have heard a pin drop. And there's a moment towards the end where people were like jumping on their seats and pumping their fists. I've never seen an audience take to a movie so hard. It's still amazing.
it's so good. It's so holds up. Everything about it, the soundtrack, that just so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Standard issue disclaimer, Roman Polanski's a horrible human being.
Oh, he's the worst pedophile in the world, and never give him any money. Yeah, completely agree. And then, so I do have one closeout, which is, so you gave us a
Okay.
little taste of, I know you're working on some stuff. Can you give us any
Oh, yeah.
spoilers? Can you?
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. So my book, I've got two books coming out, one in 2021 and one in 2022, both novels. But the one for 2021 is called the Final Girl Support Group. It's a book I've been working on since like 2013. I think I wrote it even before Horror Store. And I just have kept going back to it and rewriting it. And there were a few years when no one would publish it because Riley Sager's Final Girls came out, and apparently there can only be one book about Final Girls. Um, and so it's finally coming out. I'm really, really happy with this version. But basically, it's about the short version is it's, you know, horror movies, slashers exist in real life, and there are final girls who become very famous, and these franchises get spun off of their life stories. But there's a support group for the real final girls, and they're all in their 40s now. And they're kind of quite, why are we still in this group? Why are we still holding on to this thing that happened in high school? You know, and someone's killing them one by one. And the only person who believes that's happening is the most paranoid member of the group, and no one believes her. So it's been a lot of fun. Right? I grew up watching horror movies, way more than reading books. And I love horror movies. There are a few that I don't like. But I had to ask myself, like, I've spent a lot of my life watching women getting killed. And what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? And if you actually take it seriously, like I saw a lot of these Final Girl shows, like Scream Queens. I didn't watch them, but I saw them coming out, and they all took this very campy kind of thing towards it. And I felt like, you know, what's it like when you are 17 and all your friends get killed? And then you kill someone to save your own life, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. And everyone else thinks it's entertainment, and it's your life. And I don't know, I just really wanted to sort of like, most of my books have some kind of thing I'm trying to figure out in them. And like, that's that for that one. And then the book that's coming out in 2022 is one I'm just starting in a few weeks. And I've been sort of getting my stuff together, ready for it, because I just turned in the last draft of Final Girls on Monday. But it's the only thing I'll say about it is dolls, puppets, and clowns. I just feel like there's not enough horror about dolls, puppets, and clowns. So we're going clown crazy in this one.
Well, I don't know if you see all my dolls up
Oh
there.
yeah, yeah.
100% in. Bring
Yeah, we had a doll collection when I was growing up, and it was horrifying.
as well it should be.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun, and I have so many notes written down about other books and movies to watch, and I'm so excited about your next two
thanks.
books. So thank you so much. I really, really
No,
appreciate it.
thank y'all. You guys are great. I can't believe this book club is this huge. Y'all are insane. More
so
power to you.
It's so much fun.
All right, bye, y'all. Thanks for having me.